Hi, welcome to another episode of MYD Global. I'm your host, Leanne Hackman-Carty. Do you ever wonder why we continue to reinvent the wheel every single time a disaster happens? It just doesn't make sense. So in this episode, I'm speaking with Jeff Sjostrom. He's the president of the Galveston Economic Development Partnership, and he's working in collaboration with the Institute for Sustainable Development on piloting a Business Resiliency Center. These centers are meant to stand up throughout the year and be a great tool for communities going forward. So stay tuned as I talk to Jeff about what a Business Resiliency Center is and how you can get involved. Hey Jeff, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Leanne. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for agreeing to spend some time with me today to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, but also near and dear to your heart, that whole business piece in disaster response and recovery. So before we get started, can you just tell the viewers a little bit about your background?
You bet. I am president of the Galveston Economic Development Partnership. Just celebrated our 20th year here in Galveston, which is a world record from anyone's perspective. I've been doing economic development for a little over 30 years here in Texas. Moved to Texas after I graduated from school in Ohio and really backed into economic development. But I've done small rural economic development. For 8 years, I coordinated the state and the federal ED finance programs for our regional planning council, which covered a 13-county area around Houston. And then they brought me down back in '99 to set up the GEDP in an attempt to create a professional and credible economic development organization. And knock on wood, we're still going strong.
That's great. So I know why you're involved in this whole area, but can you explain why your organization is even involved in disaster preparedness, recovery, response?
You bet. I think, one, because we're on a coastal barrier island in Texas, and we're vulnerable to hurricanes and natural disasters. More specifically, back in 2005, we had Hurricane Katrina that hit the Gulf Coast, and then we had Hurricane Rita that did a glancing blow off of Galveston. The mayor at the time came to the GEDP and said, okay, we've had disaster plans, but we want the GEDP to stand up a task force to go talk to some of our neighbors and allies and learn lessons from what people were experiencing as a result of Katrina and Rita. We did that and went and looked really at two different aspects. One, the city itself, and then business recovery specifically with regard to what were some of the things that we should be better prepared for future events. We did that work, prepared and submitted reports to the city, made recommendations across all fronts. And then in 2008, ironically, Hurricane Ike came ashore and decimated Galveston. We had over $2 billion in damage. It brought us to our knees. Over 80% of the businesses were impacted. We really finally closed out Hurricane Ike probably in 2019. And so it really was a long-term marathon in terms of when the event hit and when we filed our final PWs with FEMA and started to see closure for a number of our key stakeholders from that storm. In 2010, we had the Horizon oil spill that really didn't directly impact Galveston, but for the national media and the coverage of what it appeared to be in Galveston, but actually wasn't. And then we had the closure of the Gulf of Mexico for the offshore oil and gas. And so those were secondary issues that impacted us much worse than the actual event of the Horizon oil spill. And then you move to today, and ironically with Hurricane Ike, you had kind of a triad effect. You had Hurricane Ike hit, but to the day we had the national financial meltdown and we had the housing collapse in 2008. Much similarly to what we're experiencing today with COVID, the oil and gas industry, and then with what happened on Wall Street. And so fortunately, that work that we did in 2005 set us up to really start to think about how we could take more accountability for our own preparedness. And we've proven over time that through better self-preparedness, we can mitigate financial loss and hardship to those that are prepared for these types of events coming forward.
Yeah. So you and I are both involved with the Institute for Sustainable Development, and I know that you've been working closely with Steve and Jordan there on putting together almost like a pilot project in your area for a Business Resilience Center. So can you talk about what the purpose of the center would be, how it would be funded, why would you be doing it, just to kind of so people understand what a Business Resiliency Center is?
Sure. I think, Stephen Jordan, I got to meet after Hurricane Ike when he was back with the U.S. Chamber. And we have collaborated on a number of different platforms over the years through different events. And what really started us moving forward with this BRC concept, or Business Resiliency Center, was the realization that we appear to continue to be repeating experiences and seeing things that are predictable, but nobody has come to the table with solutions for. And one of those is, how do we empower communities to be much more proactively engaged in thinking about disaster preparedness, response, and recovery, and helping them with tools that we've all learned over the years, but for some reason we still aren't sharing in a broad enough stroke. And so the whole concept of the Business Resiliency Center is to create a single unified place where it can serve as an epicenter for disaster preparedness across the spectrum, to be able to deal with different events and to think about what steps you can take to prepare yourself better on the front end, to be able to respond and react when an event actually hits you. And I think what's even more resounding today is that as we've seen the entire country impacted by COVID-19 and this coronavirus, it has moved the dial on disaster preparedness away from just natural disasters to things like pandemics, to things like cyber terrorism, other events that can strike us or hit us, and for areas that aren't necessarily vulnerable to Mother Nature. Now I think there's a broader awareness that there are other events, other catastrophic things that could impact our businesses, our community, and our ability to respond and react to those. And through Galveston, through the GEDP, through our partnership with ISD, what we're looking to do is try and create a unified center where people can come together as almost like a think tank to be able to look at experiences, look at tools and resources and things that have been done not only locally, but across the country, and bring those into a centralized place where we can feed off of that and build stronger, more resilient communities.
Which is great, because I know, and the people that I talk to, and it's throughout the U.S., but even other countries, so many people go through disasters. So many people are developing similar types of tools, and it's true. Nobody has the big picture, and when a disaster hits, it's almost like you think you're the first one it ever happened to. And so you waste a lot of time and money and energy. But having something like this Business Resiliency Center standing up all the time, you're much easier. It's going to be that much more easy to respond and recover.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always draw the analogy, talking about disaster preparedness in a non-disaster environment is kind of like selling life insurance to a high school graduate. Nobody wants to hear it. Small businesses are too focused on their bottom line, on their cash flow for the month. And in Galveston, over 94% of our businesses have fewer than 50 employees. And so we have to figure out a better way, a better mousetrap to bring some of these tools and lessons learned to the forefront and integrate it into community and business planning, just specifically to make us stronger.
So when do you anticipate the center will be up and running? Is it this year, or when's your forecast?
So ironically, we've been operating somewhat virtually ourselves over the last couple of years as we've been playing with this concept. And it really came into being probably about 6 months ago as we were thinking about, not only do we have COVID now right on our doorstep, but now we're 5 weeks out from hurricane season. And so we've been looking to get this geared up for this oncoming season. We have a facility identified. We have funders selected. We have a number of pieces that are coming together. Our hope is that sometime here in the third quarter, going into the fourth quarter, that we might actually have the first phase open with a flag in the ground, and then build it out as we go forward. But I think the beauty of it is with so much information and things that the Institute is already doing, for example, with the weekly calls that you and I participate in and just the networking that's taking place organically through all of these different connectors. There are a number of things that are taking place, but we're excited that I think here over the next 90 days, we're going to see something tangible emerge and this center will become real.
Before we wrap up, is there anything else you wanted to mention that perhaps I didn't ask you about?
No, I appreciate the opportunity of being with you. You're one of our nation, one of our worlds. I guess I can't say nation because you're in Canada. But you really are a leader, and we appreciate all the things that you do as it relates to this topic and the way that you connect people. I think the opportunities are there. There are predictable pathways that are going to be followed by communities across the country as we follow this pandemic through. And I think as we continue going forward, the more we work together, the better off we all will be. So thank you so much for inviting me to be here today.